Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Dr. Jonice Webb.
Hello. Glad to be here.
I am so happy to have you here. I told you before we started that I was a huge fan and showed you the book. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, here's the amazing book. One of them, because I know you have more than one. Running
Just
on
two.
Empty. Two. But someone handed me this book when I was teaching an adult chair workshop about 8 years ago, right after your book came out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it and she had said to me, you need to read this book. It's so much like the adult chair. I was like, oh, okay. And then I read it. I was like, oh, I love your work. So it's such an honor to have you on the show today. And by the way, we have an adult chair Facebook group, and I cannot even tell you how many people have said, could you please have the author of Running on Empty on? So here we are.
Oh, yay. Thanks for asking for me, people.
Yes, you had a lot of fans, definitely,
that's
for
great.
sure.
Great.
Yeah. So, okay, so much to ask you. First of all, CEN, childhood emotional neglect. What is it? Explain
That's a
to
great
people,
question.
what the heck is it?
What the heck is it?
Start right there. Yes.
Well, it sounds like such a downer. I know the term is just sound so, kind of negative, but it really is quite simple. It happens when you grow up in a household that really just underattends to the world of emotion. So whatever you're feeling inside as a child, either no one notices, people don't seem to react to it, people don't speak the language of emotion, people don't use emotion words. And basically this teaches the child that feelings aren't real, they don't matter. Keep them to yourself. No one cares. And as a child, you have to cope with that. So to just get by in your childhood home, you don't want to burden your parents. You feel like something's wrong with you because you're having feelings. So you just learn how to block them off. And that can get you through your childhood okay, not great, but basically as an adult, there you have this wall between yourself and your feelings. And we need our feelings. As you know, Michelle, you talk about this a lot. We need our feelings to survive and thrive in our adult lives. And so there are untold numbers of people walking around with their feelings on the other side of a wall, just wondering what's wrong with me? Why am I different? Why do I feel different than everyone else?
See that, and that's what's fascinating is they don't even know like what's going on with them. They don't understand that what's wrong is I'm just not feeling my emotions.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people with CEN feel like there's something missing inside, which is why one of the main results I talk about is emptiness. It can feel like this empty feeling. And so many of them really feel like it's some deep flaw that they were just born with, or they assume everyone feels this way and just don't realize that there's anything wrong with them, except they just feel like something's not right. So it's kind of an internal gaslighting, really.
Wow. Here's a question. So for people that are walking around with, let's say, anxiety or depression, codependency, all of these kinds of things, are you saying that is childhood emotional neglect underneath those things or the cause of those? Or, I mean, are they all the same? Are they all in one, or could it be separate?
I think it depends what you grow up with. If you're growing up in a emotionally neglectful home where feelings aren't dealt with or spoken or managed, you don't learn anything about emotions. You don't learn how to feel your emotions, how to name them, how to identify what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, or how to use your emotions. So basically that sets you up for basically having anxiety, because you don't know what to do with the fear. You don't know what to do with the stress. You don't know what to do with that anticipation. And kids who don't learn what to do with those feelings are going to be prone to anxiety. And same with depression, on a different feelings. Same with anger problems, different feelings.
Yeah. And the way that I define anxiety actually in the adult cheer model is the physical manifestation of unfelt emotions, because it's actually a physical manifestation. It's a knot in your stomach. It's the rapid heartbeat. It's the tightness in your throat. But with my practice, when I sat with clients and I'll say, let's slow it down and let's just go into the body and let's see what's going on. Let's do a body check even. Their anxiety started to alleviate. And all we're doing is doing a feeling check, physical feeling first. And then we'd figure out what the feelings were. And then their anxiety would start going away. So, okay. Very fascinating. So when people feel flawed or that empty feeling, what I'm hearing you say is shame. Like I have shame. Is it different, or is this childhood emotional neglect? Is it the same?
I think the shame comes from being ashamed of the most deeply personal biological part of expression of who you are, which is your feelings.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel like you shouldn't be having them and they're wrong and you're judging yourself for having them, it just leads to a whole lot of shame.
Right. So true. So true. So what makes it so hard for us as adults to feel our emotions? What happens? Like, what happens when we're growing up? You said we wall them off. What exactly is going on, though?
Well, I really, children's brains are incredibly adaptive, which is how children manage to grow up while they're, in abusive households, for example, or being passed around in foster families. Kids go through so many awful things. Those things they can remember, however, I'll just mention because they're much more memorable and observable than CEN is. But basically, the child brain it's very adaptable. And when you get that message that feelings are not to be had in this home, you learn how to push them down and push them down, and you just keep pushing them down. And eventually your brain, the child brain, just erects a wall that so that you don't have to feel anything. And that wall stays there until you take it down.
Wow. So would you say that, I don't even know if it's possible to know this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why not? Like in general, how many people are walking around with CEN? Is it like 50% of our population? Do you have any idea about that? Because this feels to me so common. Who the heck grew up in a family that really had parents that were able to help them to feel their emotions or or validate their emotions? Like, I think about like growing up, let's say in the 50s, those parents heard like, just go out and play, like get out of my face, kind of like there's no validating of emotions. And then I think about myself growing up and it's like, I didn't have that for sure. Like people sat and listened to me, but I don't think parents knew how to do that. And now I feel like, and please correct me, I'm making a guess here, but now I see parents like overly involved in the kids' lives. I don't know that they're exactly, validating emotions, but they're almost too much in the kids' lives. So talk a little bit about that.
It's interesting because emotional neglect can happen in both types of families. A lot of helicopter parents are actually emotionally neglectful because they're right there hovering, like making everything go smoothly for their child. But that doesn't mean they're aware of their child's feelings, or they're just indulging their child's feelings instead of responding to them and talking about it, naming it. Here's, no wonder you feel this way. Here's what happened to me when I was a child. You'll get through this. Those kinds of things helicopter parents can jump in and overdo. So, but then the previous generation, you described it perfectly, like the silent generation, and then baby boomers really got a heavy dose of it, for sure.
So in general, like, again, how many people are walking around with this?
I really want to conduct a research study so that I can answer that question. I try not to answer it because I don't know.
Yeah.
All I have is a general sense. And so many people with emotional neglect come to me now, and I hear from so many of them. I'm sure my view is probably must be warped. So I hate to even guess,
Can we assume that it's a lot? Because in 30 years of being a therapist, I feel like, especially after reading your book and learning more about what you do, and even what I do with helping people feel their emotions, like most people that sit on my couch, they're like, what do you mean feel my emotions? I'm like, well, what's it feel like in your body? Well, I don't know. I feel it in my head. I'm like, let's drop it below the chin. Let's just get curious about what's going on in the body. It's like most people out there are, and it's not that they're bad or wrong. There's no judgment about it. We are just not, we never learned how to do this. So we did turn it off. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do think there are a lot of people who grew up with parents who were good enough. Maybe they're not experts or whatever, but the parents were good enough to teach them that their emotions are okay and how to basically, the basic emotion skills. I think there are a lot of people that have that.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of people who don't have that and who are just walking around without this amazing resource that they should have. So,
well, I have an opinion on this, but I want yours. Is it possible for all people to learn this, how to feel their emotions?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've sat with a lot of, now again, no offense to any men that listen to this, but so many men have sat on my couch.
They're all turning it off now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But the men are like, yeah, I know. We're not supposed to feel our emotions. I mean, and unfortunately for men, that has been really what they've heard really in our society, not even just in families, but in our whole society. Men don't cry. Men are not supposed to feel anything, but anger is okay, but that's it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But men have the equal capacity or ability to feel all emotions because they're human, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely. I think men get a really, have had a really difficult road and have a harder time doing this. That said, though, men have lots of feelings that they're not aware of.
Yeah.
It drives their behavior. And once they become aware of it, it's amazing, and turn inward and start trying to feel. That is what I do almost exclusively in my practice right now, is that kind of work, helping people get in touch with their feelings. And I think there's, the group of people who are Asperger's have, I can't say there's 100% possibility for them, although some Asperger's people make progress when they really try.
Yes.
But everyone else, I feel like their feelings are in there. They just need to contact them.
Yeah.
And it can be hard, but it's definitely worth it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Do you feel like with men that, of course, again, like I was saying, like the one emotion they're allowed to feel, of course, is anger, because they're men. But don't you feel like when you talk about the wall that we put up, they have a wall of anger? Because again, they might have this loneliness underneath or behind that wall. Do you find that that's what happens when you go through that wall, or when that wall comes down, you have all these precious, beautiful emotions, and maybe the anger was just a defense system for them? Even for women too, I would say that. I'm not even just going to say it's men.
I think that does happen. There are certainly a lot of people because anger is probably the least accepted emotion from children, right?
Right.
Parents
for sure.
don't like an angry child. And being a parent myself, I understand.
Yeah.
It's hard to have an angry child, but the way parents deal with anger, I think they accept it more from boys than from girls. Mm-hmm. So it just, again, it just depends how your parents treated different emotions. And what you have inside is a constellation of how your parents treated your feelings, basically.
So talk about, how does CEN show up in relationships? Like, so people that are adults in these adult relationships, how does it show up? What do you see? What's that look like?
This is so how does CEN show up in relationships? This is why I wrote my second book, Running on Empty No More, Transform Your Relationships, because people who were working on their emotional neglect started seeing it in their marriages and their families and feeling guilty, like, oh no, I brought this into my marriage, or this is my husband, or I'm passing this down to my kids. And it can be very, very scary and a difficult thing to realize. But what I see in marriages, because I do a lot of couples therapy, is one person will be the emotionally neglected one. If that person marries someone who's not emotionally, who doesn't have the wall, a person without the emotional neglect ends up feeling really alone and will keep trying to connect and just keep hitting up against the other person's wall. And usually it's the non-CEN person who drags the CEN person to couples therapy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's that like then when they get to therapy? Does the CEN person feel like attacked or threatened, or what happens? What do you see happening?
I think it depends how, I think it always feels intrusive for a CEN person to have their partner say, I don't feel like you're, one thing I hear a lot from non-CEN partners is, I know that you love me, but I can't feel it coming from you. Like, I can't feel love from you. I see it through your actions, but where's our emotional closeness? And a lot of people just don't have the words for it, but that's what they're trying to say. They want to say, I need emotional intimacy and I'm not getting it. And believe it or not, plenty of men drag their wives to couples therapy because the wife is not showing the ability to be emotionally intimate.
Okay. Explain what that phrase means, emotionally intimate, please.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
It really is that feeling like someone understands you and gets you. Like being able to meet eyes over a crowded room and know just what the other person is experiencing right in that minute. Or being able to say, when you do this, I feel this. Being able to be vulnerable together and work through a problem together that's painful. All of those things are examples of intimacy. And when you have it with one, it's the glue, it's the tie that keeps things, it's the glue that holds you together and the fire that keeps things burning. It's amazing when you have it.
Oh, I love that. So, because what I'm imagining that happens is, when people then share how they're feeling with the person that has CEN, there might be anger. They're going to get triggered. They can't handle it. They don't want to hear it. There's an argument. So then they're going to wind up in marriage counseling. But I'm wondering, and I've been certified like in EFT therapy, and Gottman and Imago, but I don't know that, well, I guess with EFT, we're totally like working through the emotions and really getting in there and what do I feel? But that's so key in getting that person back in their body. But the work you do is, I would even take it even further. And do you do a lot of somatic work? Are you going into the body when you're helping someone feel their emotions?
I have a few different techniques that I developed to help people get in touch with their emotions. And basically it's a sort of a mindfulness technique where you turn your attention inward. And the more you do it, even if you don't feel anything when you do it, because you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
It's all described on my website. I have it in blogs. You can find that information for free. It's also in Running on Empty.
Yeah.
Basically, you just turn your attention inward and try to feel. And the more often you do that, whether you feel a feeling or not, takes a chip out of that wall. You just have to keep doing it and doing it. And the sheer action of trying, you'll eventually get through and start having more feelings.
Do you find that there's like an average amount of time? Like, how long does it take? Like, if I'm somebody with CEN, and I'm starting to kind of, slow down, really get curious about what's going on inside, do you find that some people might take a year, or some people take, a couple of weeks? Like, if they just continually are turning inward, what do you find that happens? What's the length of time it would take for somebody to start?
It varies so dramatically. And a lot of people have trouble with it. It sounds so simple.
It does.
But, it's amazing. It goes against all the childhood messages that you received. So a lot of people find it an incredible hurdle to just get themselves to do it. So sometimes I'll ask people to do it every day for a week, and they'll come back and say, I didn't do it, or I only did it twice. You know, so to give it time, it just depends how able you are to really just do it regularly, how big and thick your wall is. There are so many different variables.
And how long should someone spend turning their attention inward? We're not talking sit for an hour or two. We're talking.
Oh no, it's
quickly.
a 5-minute exercise.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's so quick. Talk about the different parenting styles. I love that. The different parenting types that you talk about in your book.
Yeah. So I actually identify 11 in the book, but I'll just mention the 3 categories because they really do split up into categories.
Okay.
So one thing we haven't mentioned so far today is that many CEN parents are actually very well-meaning, love their child, want to do right by their child. However, they grew up in an emotion-blind household. They are blind to their own emotions. They're therefore blind to their child's emotions too. So emotional neglect is by no means equated with love. You can be a loving, caring parent and be blind to your child's emotions. So I think that is the biggest category of emotionally neglectful parents out there. Not that they were perfect, but they really were trying and provided maybe a lot of other things. And that makes it even harder to look back and see what wasn't there, right? It's basically what wasn't there.
Yes.
Emotion.
Yes.
So, and one of the categories of parents that falls into well-meaning are the struggling parents. Struggling parents might be grieving over the loss of their spouse, the loss of a parent, the loss of a child, might be working for jobs to keep food on the table, might be really, really depressed and trying really hard to parent, but just don't have it to give.
Yep.
And then there is the category of parents who are basically self-involved. And here we're talking like narcissistic, sociopathic, addicted, even some addicted parents even fall into the well-meaning and struggling categories. And there's no, there's no clear cut. You have to judge your own parents' motivations based on who they are, not based on a category that, it's just a way to understand it. But
Right. Talk a little bit about narcissistic parents. That would be, I can imagine that if we had a parent or both parents that were narcissistic, that we would be we're going to have CEN. How could we not? There's no way. So is it more difficult if we grow up with narcissistic parents, or is it the same? Like there isn't really any differentiation?
Oh yeah, there's differentiation. There are so many different flavors of CEN, and it just depends what kind of parents you have. But I think, narcissistic parents are an extra challenge because they treat the child, they don't necessarily just overlook the child's emotions. They also treat the child as an extension of themselves. So you, my child, are here to reflect well on me. And if you don't do that, you're going to fall out of favor with me. If you do that, I'm going to shine a beautiful light on you, and we're going to bask in it together.
Yeah.
So that sets up a whole nother dynamic. In addition to having your feelings ignored, they actually are co-opted for the parent. So I think it does, you're going to turn out differently with different struggles if you have a narcissistic parent.
And I'm hearing, when I hear you say these things about rebuilding after CEN, it seems like that if we have CEN, we have very low self-worth. Is that true?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. Not always. Not always.
Talk about that, please.
I think what is ubiquitous among CEN people is not necessarily low self-worth, although many do have that.
Okay.
But inaccurate self-appraisal is what I called it in my book. It really is just a lack of self-knowledge. And if you think about, if your parents are not really seeing you on an emotional level, they're not really seeing who you are, they're not feeding back to you who you really are, and you don't find out who you really are as a child.
Yeah.
And then as you go forward into adulthood with your emotions cut off, you really struggle to know, what are my strengths and weaknesses really in this world? What should I be proud of? What is it okay for me to be happy about? What do I even want to have for dinner? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because
that
you're
makes
not
a lot of sense.
tuned in.
That makes so much sense. So it's a little different. I hear that. And you brought up another point. Something else I've heard you say is that childhood emotional neglect people also struggle with knowing what their needs are, what their wants are. So the basic question of like, hey, what would you like to do for dinner? It's like a blank slate. Like there isn't any sort of knowing even that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, whatever you want.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm just having a flashback to some of my clients from years ago. Like, oh, this is what was going on. Yeah. Like, I'm like, okay. And I would go right to self-worth and like, okay, hold on. Like, we got to build up that internal self, as well as let's get the feelings going. You got to know what you're feeling. Gosh, this is so good. So I've heard you talk about this, like, but what is the purpose of emotions and why do they matter?
Emotions are the expression of your deepest self, and they will direct you in your life. They guide you, they inform you, they tell you who you are, they tell you who other people are. It's your feelings with other people and about other people that will tell you what to pursue, what to avoid, what means something to you. Your feelings are the driver of your passion. They have led to most main discoveries. If you look at the biggest scientific discoveries, most of them were driven by emotion. That person was driven by some emotion about that discovery, right?
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Ooh, that's really good. When you say all that, I feel like our emotions are our like built-in navigation system, and they guide us. Do this, don't do that. But I also hear the word intuition comes to my mind. I'm like, I think it's all tied together. Wouldn't you say that? Like, they do help us. Like, for whatever reason, don't go in that building. It doesn't feel right for whatever reason. And who knows what's going to happen when so intuition seems like it's part of it as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's like your gut talking to you. It's really what intuition is. Yeah. It's your brain connecting with your gut.
Yep.
People who have really good intuition have a really good pipeline there.
So the more we feel our emotions, the more intuitive we are. So again, another bonus to feeling our emotions.
So many bonuses, yes.
Okay, what else? What else can you share with us about this emotional neglect? What else would you like to say about it? How does it affect us? You talked about in relationships. How else does it affect us, though, in our adult lives if we're walking around with CEN and we have no idea?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, a lot of people with CEN will say, I look around and I see people living life and like just feeling like, what do they say? They see people laughing and talking and seeming to participate in life in a way that I just can't. And what the picture that emerges over talking to enough folks is this general sense of just being on the outside looking in and not being a part of things.
Right.
And it makes perfect sense that you would feel that way, right? If this amazing source of richness of life and connection is walled off inside of you. Other people are accessing that and enjoying it. So it's almost like a feeling like you're living in black and white and other people are living in color.
Wow. I'm hearing social anxiety too. I'm feeling like someone with CEN would also have social anxiety.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Because it is like emotions are also the source of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So really you're going to have some challenges in the areas of emotional intelligence, all the social skills that go into that. And that just makes social interactions can feel like you're going into a lion's den without any weapons, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So talk about, let's just move into then the pandemic. When I think about someone with CEN and when we've had to go into lockdown and not leave the home and stay closer to home, it would seem that someone with CEN might feel a relief. Can you talk a little bit about that? What have you noticed during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it can go both ways for sure. But I think among CEN people, there is more of a tendency towards towards a sense of relief than in the general population, for example.
Yeah.
Just because it relieves people from having to put themselves out there in the world and without all their tools. So it can feel like, oh, my wall, I've got my wall, I've got these walls, and now I don't have to be challenged. It feels so good.
That's what I was thinking. You have the walls to your house now. We can stay behind them and we're safe. We're not challenged. Wow, that's really, really good.
And then some CEN people, because I hear from people every day, like tons of comments. I'm sure you get this too.
Oh, yeah.
You feel so like I'm educated by all this every day, reading what people write to me. But a lot of people will say, I feel guilty that this was earlier in the pandemic. I think I feel guilty that I'm so relieved by the pandemic when people are dying. Does this mean I'm a bad person?
Oh,
wow. Yeah.
Wow.
But obviously it doesn't mean that you're a bad person if you feel that way. It's not your fault.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. So if someone's listening to this right now, and I'm sure people are going, oh my gosh, that sounds like me. Like this is me. Can you give us some ideas on what are some steps someone could do like today to start their healing journey? Like, how do I start working my way out of this? I'm identifying with everything. I've already ordered your book on Amazon, both of your books. What do I do right now? Like, can you help me right now? And I know you have an emotional neglect questionnaire on your website.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. That was the first thing I was going to say. Take the questionnaire because it really helps people identify. I don't know how many people have contacted me and said, I don't know how you wrote this questionnaire, but you had to have known me. It's like you're in my head. And that's a CN, because other people take it and say, what is this? This has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It's the people who take it and feel like, okay, this is hitting something. It means that you have CEN. Yeah. So it's a good way to identify without having to remember actual incidents of emotional neglect from childhood, because most people, let's face it, can't.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing you say also, though, is that it's not like there was a big trauma. These are subtle things. Again, these are people, and I'm hearing you also say it could have been a trauma, or a traumatic childhood, but also these are the people that grew up in a very loving family, food and shelter. Mom came to my soccer game and watched me cheerlead and all these things. But yet now I'm an adult and I feel empty. I feel numb inside. So what the heck is going on? Like, I don't have any negative memories. I don't have any abuse. So, this is so good. What can someone do though? So they've taken your questionnaire and now they're going, oh my gosh.
Oh no.
What do I do now? What's something that people can do today, right now?
So there are lots of resources on my website, emotionalneglect.com, to use, and free videos that can be watched that will teach a lot about it. Starting to do that exercise, which they can read all about. In fact, the book Running on Empty has a lot of resources to use in terms of tracking emotions. There's a huge emotion word list in the back of the book. And a lot of times I suggest people go through and highlight words they don't know, because if you increase your emotion vocabulary, that's a really great place to start. And it involves the head. So it's more comfortable for CEN people.
True.
So it's a way to like dip not just a toe in, but your whole foot.
Yeah.
To start to really gain some, it's like building the emotion skills, right? But I think a big thing is not to pressure, to go too fast, because you really want to do the work on a little bit more of a deep level, and take it a little bit slower and make it real, because that's where you're going to get the biggest effect.
Yeah.
And on my website also, there's a list of 700 trained CEN therapists on there. So people can go there and find a therapist all over the world. And then I have I have the Fuel Up for Life program, which is walks people through the stages of recovery, and is structured. And so there's that also on my website. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to go about it.
Yeah, I think that your website, you have a wealth of information on there. I'll agree 100% there. So definitely go to the website, and also start right now or today just getting curious about what's going on inside. It just takes, like you were saying, like 5 minutes, like even 1 minute, just
even 30 seconds. Yeah.
Pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling? My son just said this to me, or my husband or wife just said this, or whomever, the guy at the grocery store. I'm feeling something. What could it be? And get curious. Get into that daily practice. So
yes,
this was awesome. Tell us again, you just told us everything, but give me your website one more time. I'm going to put it in the show notes.
emotionalneglect.com.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything else you want to share?
I just want to emphasize that if you want to do this, you can do this. I haven't met a single person yet who's wanted to do it who hasn't been able to.
I'm so glad that you said that, because people ask me this question all the time too. Do you really think I can heal? I'm like, all you need is the desire and the will. And absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. So thank you for saying that as well, because I believe the same exact thing.
Good.
This was so good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for spending time with me and for sharing all your wisdom with our audience, because your work, like I said, is so, so needed for the world. So
my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Thank
you. Great.
You.